me okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. So first, before I forget, hourly pay. He looked at me, what do you think about hourly pay? I think it's kind of a necessary evil, right? There are a lot of places where you really have to. California, we got people from California here. It's going to be something that I think a lot of companies are going to have to do anyway. And when we start thinking about millennials and generation, what comes after that, X and Z and whatever's coming next, a lot of them are really interested in having some sort of guaranteed type of pay, whether it's hourly or salary. One caution on the salary versus hourly comment, and I'm sure you guys already know this, make sure when you're making that decision that you're considering whether you legally have to pay overtime or not. It's going to vary by state, and it's going to vary by type of driver that you have. Okay, so that's not just something that you can willy-nilly decide, oh, I'm just going to pay them a fixed salary and I'm not going to have to pay them overtime. You have to check legality on that first. All right. So let me get into my stuff really quick. So 20 years of experience developing originally sales compensation plans, okay? And then the last 10 years I have focused on transportation and logistics companies. Within about the last 5, it has become not really a focus on driver pay, but certainly something that I do, where I am also helping companies think about how to do incentive-based pay for drivers and forklift operators and pretty much any role you can think of in the supply chain, using the fundamental principles from sales compensation design. So it's a very interesting merging of my worlds coming together on this. And so thinking about driver pay, really, hold on one second for this slide, but thinking about driver pay, you really I think of it in terms of what portion of their compensation is sort of that fixed or guaranteed part, which would be like their hourly or their salary portion. There may be an activity-based component, so miles, cases, stops, that kind of thing. And then there may be an incentive component. So I really think of it as all 3 of these things, and I don't think of it as something that you pick among them. The best thing is to figure out how do you put all of them together to create a holistic package for the drivers. So the other interesting perspective that I bring to this is I've worked with for-hire carriers as well. So I've worked with over-the-road trucking companies that are typically they just pay by the mile. They might have some safety, they might have some stuff like that in there, but it's a very different world than private fleets. So I've just sort of taken an academic interest in this world of just sort of saying I'm a comp geek. I like thinking about compensation. So what in the world is going on with truck drivers in the United States in terms of compensation? And so I put together this slide so you can see how vastly different this world is. And this, I'm certain, has some inaccuracies in it, so don't jump all over it if you know something that happens to be different than what's on this slide. It's just what I've seen in terms of the types of compensation that is typically done for the different types of drivers that exist. And it seems to me, this may be wrong, it may be a spurious correlation, but I think high-touch freight tends to go with the highest pay, which makes sense, right? So it's just like Tony was saying about what they have to do. Up and down the stairs, lugging that hand truck all the time. It makes sense that they would be paid more. What's interesting though is that those guys that are almost never home, the over-the-road drivers from some of my for-hire carriers that I've worked with, where they're out 3 to 4 weeks at a time, they tend to be fairly low paid. So one of the reasons we could get into an economic discussion on this has to do with the economics of the company and whether they are the product or they are a means of delivering the product, right? So a lot of you guys, your drivers, the delivery service is not so much the product as the thing that is being delivered. That gives you a different margin structure that you can use to afford to be able to pay the drivers more. All right, many different types of drivers, many different ways to pay, and I tried at one point to line these up, and that's what I came up with, okay? So it's a mess. It's a mess. So if you want to do something different, what does that look like? And Tony alluded to this throughout his presentation. You can't just think about pay, okay? There's a concept in the HR world, and that's where I come from. I've got all of the HR certifications and all that stuff, called total rewards, okay? So you really need to think about what is the total rewards package that you are able to give to your drivers, and what do they value? This new generation values different things. So it's not going to be just about making the highest amount of money in terms of cash. They're going to be looking for home time. That's a big, big thing. So that comes under the work-life balance part of the total rewards equation. Benefits. You guys tend to be much, much better. When I say you guys, I mean the world of food distribution, private fleet kind of thing. Much, much better than over-the-road carriers. So if you're comparing yourselves to like J.B. Hunt or Schneider or Swift merged with somebody, it's hard to keep track of them these days. You guys probably have much, much better benefits for your drivers than they do. So that's one advantage that you have. Keep it up. Don't think that means you can go backwards on it. You also have to make sure that you are doing something that is differentiating your top drivers from your average drivers from your bottom drivers. This is where incentive compensation does come into play. And I like this graphic. I was actually having a conversation with my 23-year-old son who's recently graduated from college and is looking for a job. And he set up a little app for himself. It's called Day One, if you're interested in it. It's a little journaling app. And he has given himself badges for every day when he goes through, when he sends out resumes, when he does something in terms of working out. He has set up an incentive plan for himself in this little app where he gives himself little awards, little badges, and he's trying to, and I didn't try to figure out the app, but it's like he can collect these things for himself. So he set up a little game. That's what we're gonna need to do, okay? So thinking about this generation, they grew up playing video games. They grew up leveling up. So they're gonna look for something that they can use to get those awards as they go. And it doesn't necessarily have to tie to money. My kid's doing this, and there's, a job, hopefully, at the end of it when he sends out enough resumes. But he just likes to collect the awards and know that he's had a good day. So I like this because it's got those little graphics in there. So think about all of the different things that you can do that's beyond just hours, miles, activity-based pay. So you can have fuel economy to the extent that you can measure that. A lot of companies will go to things like hard braking, acceleration, that kind of thing as a proxy for fuel economy if you actually can't get MPG. But the technology is coming where it's going to be easy enough to track that soon. Safety, obviously that's pretty easy. Compliance, productivity, difficulty if they've got a tough job versus an easy job. Obviously, you have to do some stuff that's legally required. And then customer service stuff. Are you getting good feedback from your customers? All of these are different things that you could put into an incentive plan for your drivers. How do you decide what to use? So Tony unfortunately skipped over one of his best slides. And it was SMART, okay? So it's basically you want your goals to be SMART. That means you want to keep them very simple. What does SMART stand for? Simple, measurable,
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely.
Yep. I say relevant, objective, measurable, controllable. That doesn't smell smart. It spells MORC. That's the best I can do with that. I've tried many different ways to come up with an acronym for that. But it's the same idea, right? It has to be something that they can understand, that you can measure, that you can track. You also, as Tony said, you have to test this. And that is the thing that I found out really quickly and the hard way when I did my first driver pay project. I thought sales compensation had testing in it in terms of changing when you're changing sales rep plans. No way. I had no idea what I was getting into. When you're talking about testing driver pay, Tony said 3 months worth of data. I would say at least 6, just because you got to pick up some seasonality in there. Ideally a year, but if you're going down with a company that does activity-based pay, I worked with one that tracked 85 different statistics. And we were trying to boil this down to 5 or 6 different things. There's a nightmare getting that modeling done to see what was going to happen. You have to understand some basic statistics when you go into that. So you need to basically be looking at that data and saying, are we at the 25th percentile? Where is that? Where's the 50th percentile? Where's the 75th percentile? And ideally the 90th percentile. When you're thinking about differentiating pay based on performance, that's the perspective that you need to have. You need to understand what your bell curve looks like so that you can know what does good performance look like, and you can tell them. So you typically are going to set your expected pay level someplace around the 50th or 60th percentile. So that's right in the middle of your distribution, maybe skewed a little bit up, okay? Because you generally aren't going to put in an incentive plan just to reward people for doing what they've been doing. you want them to improve their performance. So set the mean or the middle point in terms of where you're paying them out, target, at about the middle, but then you want something exciting to happen for those people that are able to get to the 75th or the 90th percentile. Typically you want them to be able to get 1.5 times or 2 times whatever the middle payout value is. So typically I would say at the 10th percentile performance, they would not get any incentive compensation. So if you're thinking about something like safety or on-time percentage or those kinds of things, if they're that far at the bottom, no variable pay, no incentive pay. 25th percentile, maybe they get about 25% of the incentive. At the 50th percentile, they get 100%. Now remember, 50th does not mean they're doing half the job, okay? 50th means they're right smack in the middle. Half of the people are doing worse, half of the people are doing better. 75th percentile, now they're in the top 25%. They maybe get 125% of the pay, and 90th percentile maybe gets 150. If you want to go really wild and crazy, make it 200%. You're going to get a lot of motivational value, even if you're not paying that much in terms of the actual dollars. But if somebody knows that they can double their payout by far exceeding your expectations, that's going to be exciting to them. And like Tony said, it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, right? You could reward them with additional days off there, or gift cards, or things like that. I've worked with some over-the-road companies. This was one of them. I wanted to show this to you because I wanted you guys to see what this can look like when you start to, it's called gamification, when you start to put it into a format where they can really start to feel like it's more of a video game for them. But with this company, and it was Pride, by the way, that did it, we actually had, it's hard to read over here, but you can see on this other side, they had cash bonus. After they accumulated a certain number of points, they were able to get like in-cab Wi-Fi, mini fridge, gift cards, so there was a lot of non-monetary things that they could add in as well. For them, over-the-road drivers that are in the cab for a long time, anything they can do to upgrade their accommodations is a huge deal to them. All right, I've got another one here for you just to show you what it looks like in terms of putting this together, trying to make it so that they can have a lot of different things. Again, challenge was keeping it simple, right? You have to keep it simple, but you also have to make it interesting, and you have to make it fair. So one of the things Tony alluded to is with activity-based pay, if that's all you're doing, it can really come down to what lane did I get, what route did I get, and how you do your bid process for that. Doing incentive pay on top of that can help even out some of that unfairness in activity-based pay, because now even people with a lot of short haul stuff can have an opportunity to exceed on those metrics.